Let us sing this beautiful song by Karen Drucker. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. Let's say it again. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed.
It's comfortable. I invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze. Just relax into your seat and become aware of your breath. And center in on the stillness and the softness, this quiet moment. And know that there's nothing that you have to do right now. There is nothing that needs your attention, unless you're driving. So you can just stop and pause. This morning, not just that still, quiet place within that is illuminated in consciousness where that Christ spark is showing up as you. Let's shift our attention and our awareness to this transcendent experience of the divine. God in everything that we can see, that we can hear, that we can touch. God, the very movement of our being. When we see with spiritual eyes, when we hear with spiritual ears, when we know that everything in this manifest playground planet Earth is the materialization of God, manifest. And everything that God made, God called it good. Good. The presence of God, absolute good, unconditional love, unlimited in nature. And eternal. And so using that faculty of imagination this morning, I invite you to see all things with spiritual eyes and hold it with appreciation. And knowing that some things don't feel good, that some things have been done and manufactured for not loving purposes, we know that God means it for good. this moment. And hear these words with spiritual ears. God means you for good. Eternal good. And so with a gentle breath, bring that attention and that awareness back into that place in consciousness that is illuminated and expansive in ways we cannot name. And hold this tremendous vibration of gratitude. For we appreciate all that is in God, all that is God, because it is all God. And so we join now for just a moment in the stillness and the silence, and we hold on to this idea in gratitude that God means you for good. God means me for good. I am good. In the silence. I am so blessed. Say that with me. I am so blessed. Resonating with that vibration of gratitude, sit in appreciation and bring forth into this manifest place on earth that you are good. You are so blessed because you are a blessing. And as you come back to the time and the space, bring with you the knowledge that with a gentle breath, you can be in this presence of the One, illuminated from within. I am so blessed. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. And as we prepare to receive Rev Todd's message, let us sing this one, We Shall Overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, here in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Let's see that again. We shall live in joy. We shall live in joy. We shall live in joy. We shall live in joy someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, here in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. God will see us through. God will see us through. God will see us through. God will see us through someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Thank you, Deidrey. Happy Sunday, friends. Anybody ever felt like they're stuck in the past? Or maybe you see some other people that you're like, oh, they're stuck in the past. Right? So we're in a. I've been following this question the past several weeks of, what if you're not really stuck? And what came up for me this week was about being stuck in the past. Right? And when we think of being stuck in the past, for me, it comes up with some old wounds. You have any old wounds? Oh, y'all have healed all those, haven't you? That's all done. Any regrets? Or maybe a couple of resentments that still fester a little bit. Isn't that a great word, fester? Or Sometimes stuck in the past is sort of a feeling of nostalgia, right? The good old days. The good old days. What if being stuck in the past really isn't about our memories? Not about our memories. What if being stuck in the past means that we are allowing yesterday to determine what we are capable of recognizing today? See, the past, it doesn't just, the past isn't just about our memories, right? The past can affect what we expect. I'm going to go back to Genesis for a minute. Y'all remember the story of Lot and his, Lot and the family, and they're leaving Sodom and Gomorrah. We're not going there today. Well, we might. I don't think we're going there, but you'll see why I don't want to in a moment. But when we think about Lot and his wife, you remember that they were told, "Y'all get out of here," right? And the Lord said, "Go up onto this high mountain." And Lot was like, "Well, I really don't want to walk that far." You ever feel like that? Like you've been given direction. You're like, "I don't really want to do all that. How about I do this? I go to this other place that's not quite as high up," right? Because we know that metaphysically a higher space means going into a higher place in consciousness, right? And they were told, you remember what else, what they were told?
Don't look back.
Thank you, Dawn. Don't look back. Don't look back. And so often we hear this story as punishment, right? Because what did Lot's wife do? She turned around. She looked back. She didn't have a rear view mirror to look into. She turned around. And do we remember what happened to her? She turned into a pillar of salt. She wasn't punished because she looked back. She was punished. No, she wasn't punished. She wasn't, right? Because Genesis, in our evolving consciousness away from separation of the garden into our understanding our oneness, the atonement at one-ment, right? Turning around is not punishment. It's interpreted as punishment because at that point in time in consciousness, we believed in a punishing God as a species of humanity. We had to be punished. But it's not punishment. It is the memory of turning around and looking back and becoming immobilized because all we can do is remember the good old days. We get focused on what was. And it's not punishment. It's what happens, right? She got immobilized. Ed Rabel, who was a very well-known and loved Unity minister and teacher, said the most popular usage, he's talking about how this happens. He says, it's a hang-up. We get hung up on the past. We get hung up on, but I want it to be that way again. Right? He said it used to be psychiatric terms like fixations and psychoses. In metaphysics, we call these crystallization. Becoming a pillar of salt is crystallization, which is in a place in consciousness where memory has replaced progress. What was is more important than what can be. And that says a lot about where I am right now. Right? And it's attachment. It is attachment, not just to because maybe it's just me, but I have at points in my life been attached to the pain of my memories. I like to revel in that sometimes. Fester. right? But we can also be attached to our certainty. We can be attached to familiar identities. We can be attached to old ways. We can be attached to the old way of life that used to work. Anybody have that? So good for you. Anybody that's attached to the old ideas of what church is? You ever see that? You ever hear about that? Have you ever been attached to that old idea of who you are? Who you're supposed to be? Now, I'm sure that this is not true of you. Well, I'm not sure, but I'm going to guess, right? But I can tell you that for me, some of my attachments are to what my physical spacesuit used to look like, because it don't look like that anymore. My hair has not always been this color. So sometimes I am attached to what my previous abilities used to be. You ever had that? Yeah, because talked to one friend this week who was telling me that in their younger days, they were quite the runner. They ran a lot. I'm glad I'm not attached to that idea because I have never been a runner. Right? But for them, that's wonderful. But right, we get attached to like earlier stages of our life. We get attached to the world we used to remember. We get attached to what church looked like in 2018. Right, because in 2019, some stuff happened and changed the world. And here's what has come to me, what I know now is that we cannot move into a new experience while demanding that it look like the old experience. We cannot move into a new experience of Playground Planet Earth while demanding that it looks like what it used to look like. Back when politicians on both sides of the aisle used to have discourse and could agree to disagree and still move forward for the best of the world, for the best of our citizens. You know, when decisions were made, right, the indigenous communities realized that, you know, every decision they made had to be made for the best good of the seventh generation. And not for, you know, how much income I'm going to get this year. Right? So sometimes we can get stuck in the past because that's what I remember, and boy, wasn't it good. And this is not the point of today's talk, but you know, it might have been good for you, but I promise you there were some people in the world that it was not good for. And looking back is not the only way we can get stuck. I was reminded during my readings this week of our Easter story, the third day after the crucifixion. Remember, Mary comes to the tomb and it's open, and there's no body there. And so she goes back and she tells Peter and she tells Simon Peter, and they come running and they're like, oh, there's nothing here. And then they went back to wherever they were staying. They're like, we are not hanging out here. But Mary goes back. And she encounters two angels sitting at the head and the foot of where the body would have been, but is not there now. And you know, the funeral cloths are laying there. And they're like, hey, Mary, what you doing? Well, I'm looking for my Lord, right? She has come to prepare the body, right? To anoint it with herbs and oils, and as was the custom of the time. So why did she come to the tomb? She was grieving. She was in mourning. She was in the depths of her grief. Have we been in the depths of our grief? Because life doesn't look the way we think it should look. She is grieving, and the last thing that she witnessed was the violent execution of the leader of her group. And she's grieving, and even though he said, I'm going to be back in 3 days, she was not prepared for resurrection. Right? The angels appear. The angels appear. Angels metaphysically are divine ideas. Divine ideas show up for us. Even in the depths of our grief, when the world does not look the way we want it to look. Divine ideas are showing up there to perhaps to interrupt our certainty, to open us up to the possibility of new life. Perhaps to introduce us to a new interpretation of what is happening. And still Mary doesn't get it. Still she does not get it. And then the Christ appears. Jesus Christ, Christ Jesus shows up. And Mary mistakes him, not for Jesus, but for Jesus the gardener. Right? She mistakes him. And he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm looking for my Lord. If you have moved him, show me where you've taken him so that I can go and do this thing I'm called to do in my grief. And it is that point that the answer for her desire was standing in front of her, and she could not see it. How often does that happen to us? We can't see what is standing right in front of us because we are not willing to see it. And I truly believe that so many of us, including me, that we stand in front of new possibilities of unexpected healings. I want to thumbtack that for a second. Healing metaphysically has nothing to do with your physical body. Healing has to do with the awareness that you are already whole. In consciousness, you are the perfect idea of you in the mind of God, and you are whole. That's what healing is. And so many times an unexpected awareness of our wholeness shows up and we don't recognize it. Sometimes there is an emerging purpose for our lives that shows up and we don't recognize it because it doesn't necessarily look the way we thought it was going to look. You ever had that happen? Sometimes what shows up for us is new forms of community, and we don't recognize it. Sometimes what shows up is the invitation to deeper spiritual understanding. And we're not willing to see it yet. And we fail to recognize them because they don't arrive in the form that we expected. But Mary hears her name from the Christ, and she shifts her perspective, she lifts up her consciousness, and she realizes this is her teacher, this is her rabbi, this is her way shower, calling her. Our past not only affects what we remember, our past affects what we are able to recognize. When we put too much emphasis in looking back and not into moving forward into the possibility of what is being created. And I was sitting with this week because I've told you before. Some of you were here and have heard me talk about my rejection of Christianity, my rejection of Christian leaders because of the hypocrisy I saw. I mean, the 9-year-old me who sat in the third pew of the Pentecostal Holiness Church saw hypocrisy when the minister's wife ran off with the choir conductor. And those stories are a dime a dozen. But what I know is that because of that, what I realize is not only did then I reject Christianity and I rejected Christian leaders, I rejected Jesus. And that is still a wound that is festering in me. And I know it's festering in me because yesterday it turned out that Morehead City was having a Pride in the Park event. And at the very beginning of it, I had two men approach me to talk to me. At first I was like, are they a couple? And they said, so, hey, yeah, we just came out because we wanted to talk to some people and, and find out what's going on. And so, why are you here? And the tone changed like that. Why are you here? Because they were from another type of congregation, and they wanted to know if I had been saved. And I was wearing a T-shirt that said Unity, but nothing on what I was wearing said that I was a minister. And so I told them, I am the minister at Crystal Coast Unity in Atlantic Beach. And I'm here because we are an open and affirming community. We celebrate people. I'm also here because I'm an openly gay man. Well, I guess that was enough to convince them that I could not be saved, and they stopped talking to me. But for the next 2.5 hours, I made sure that at all times I could identify where they were standing and who they were talking to because I had fear. Because But yet fear's not who I'm supposed to be in the world. That's not what I'm supposed to practice. And so, I and at that point I struggled a little bit with Jesus, not because of the teachings, because what I know now is that I love Jesus. I love the teachings of my way shower. I'm not crazy about some of the followers who tell me that I'm unworthy. Right? Because I am worthy. Amen. But what I understand now is that I rejected these ideas about Jesus. And now I struggled then to recognize the wisdom that had been there all along. And I came to Unity. And I think some of you have heard that story before, right? Somebody kept inviting me and I kept saying, no, if I walk in, the church or I is going to burst into flames. Nobody wants that. And I finally went to hear them sing. And guess what? I burst into flames in consciousness. And could see something different, right? But because Unity did not give me a new God. Unity gave me new eyes. Right? And then after even after that, there were years and years that passed before I ever was willing to step into this calling that had been pulling me forth from the point when I was 9 years old and I heard that call, right? And so finally I step into this idea of ministry, and even when I first stepped into it, I said, I'm not going to be a congregational minister. That is far too political. And my mentor said, not you know that it doesn't have to be. Maybe you are the one that's being called into showing people how it can be different. New possibilities. All right, and then I came here, I arrived at this congregation. I cannot believe that it has been more than, that it was 6 years ago. 6 years ago that I've been here, and it was 1 month before COVID hit. Right, and now, and so 6 years into this, I am still wrestling with this question. Is God inviting me to lead forms of ministry and community that don't look like what came before? Because it does not look like what came before. And that could be a little bit challenging because I don't have a roadmap. Did y'all know that? Part of me wants to turn around and look back, but then I'll crystallize and I won't be able to move forward. So I've got to remember I'm going to use my rearview mirrors, right? What changed in Mary? What changed in Mary in that moment where she recognized her rabbi, her teacher, her way shower? She did not get smarter. She did not suddenly have it all figured out. She did not develop a better theology. Her certainty was interrupted. Her certainty was interrupted. Sometimes the questions that we ask don't come with an answer. Sometimes the questions simply create enough space for truth to call our name. Sometimes our questions just create enough space for truth to call our name. So the reading I included in the newsletter, if you want to read, this is Imelda Shanklin. The man who suffers from amnesia does not recognize himself, but he is himself. You are the idea of God, capable of perfect translation. Someday you will become wholly awake to your divine identity and will begin consciously to take on the image of perfection. I think Mary had a moment of amnesia, spiritual amnesia. She did not realize who she was. I spent more than 40 years having spiritual amnesia, not knowing who I was. Even though I felt called, I did not feel enough. But I was already whole. And each and every one of you that is here in Playground Planet Earth, you are enough. You are whole. Consciousness, this is Shanklin's words again, consciousness of your true identity is awareness that you are as enduring as God. You cannot fear the thing that cannot take place. You know that God's immortality is your immortality and that there can be no death. Not your physical spacesuit that doesn't look the way it used to, that can't do the things it used to do, right? The things that we regret and we lament and we turn around and we stare because I can't do that anymore. But you've been prepared for what's next. You've been prepared for new possibilities. The earth is being prepared for new possibilities, and it does not look good sometimes, does it? And what if nothing's wrong? What if the only thing that makes it look wrong, that makes it look bad is because we are crystallized. We have turned around and we have looked, and we have spiritual amnesia. We have forgotten who we are. And so instead, we identify with our grief. We identify with our age, our loss, our disappointment. We identify with our religious hurts that still might be festering, like Reverend Todd. There's a bug flying around up here. We identify with division. And that's not to say that being aware of any one of those things is wrong. But it's not who we are. We can still be the age we are. We can still hold on to the grief that we have and still know the truth of who we are. We can overcome, I shall overcome amnesia and know who I really am. And our way shower said, everything I've done you can do when you know who you are. Overcome your amnesia. And we heal. Healing in the truth that it is not about becoming whole, but it is that we remember that we are already whole. We were created in wholeness. And so this week, your assignment, if you're willing to take it on, is to notice moments where you're certain. Where we're certain, like, this will not work. You're right, this will not work. We've decided in advance without even trying it. I've done that before. That didn't work. I still hear that being said to me around a conference table in Montgomery, Alabama, when we were changing our ticket sales strategy. We've tried this before and it didn't work. Well, we're going to try again. And we're either going to try with you or we're going to try without you. Which would you prefer? You ever been certain that somebody else wasn't going to change? Well, you're holding them in bondage. Have you ever been certain that my best days are behind me? Stop claiming that silliness. Have you ever been certain that community like that doesn't exist anymore? Have you ever been certain when you look around in the manifest playground planet Earth and said, God isn't active here? Have you been certain about that? God is clearly not here. Good. Because God is always active. Even when we can't recognize it. So this week, pause, and in any given situation, you can say, what am I assuming? What am I assuming? And then ask, what else might be true? What else might be true? And then take a deep breath and ask, how might life be expressing itself here, right now? How might life, love, wisdom, good be expressing itself here, right now? And then sit quietly and listen. Listen. Not for an answer, but for recognition. For recognition. What if the activity of God is already present in everything? What if the question is not, is God doing something new here? What if the question is, am I willing to see it? Am I willing to see it? Whatever is new. Resurrection is already standing in the garden. And so my invitation for you is, and for me, is to stop assuming that I know what it looks like. And that's what I was directed to share with you today. Thanks for hearing me. I love you all.
Thank you, Rev. Todd, for your message. Leaving the past behind. This one is one of my songs, and it's called What Happened There? I don't need to carry the past with me. I don't have to take the thoughts that drag me through the muck. I don't have to subscribe to reliving each mess that I made for the rest of my days. I don't need to pack the shame. I don't need the thoughts that blame. I live for the holy name. I'm cleansed, healed, and fired up by the holy flame. So what happened there stays there. What happened then was then. This isn't who I am anymore. I won't let how I thought shackle me to the floor. That was then, and this is now. By pure grace and sweat of brow, I'm called to be the truth of me somehow. What happened there stays there. I don't need to pack the shame. I don't need the thoughts that blame. I live for the holy name. I'm cleansed, healed, and fired up by the holy flame. So what happened there stays there. What happened then was then. This isn't who I am anymore. I won't let how I thought shackle me to the floor. That was then, and this is now. By pure grace and sweat of brow, I'm called to be the truth of me somehow. What happened there stays there. How I thought there stays there. And who I was there stays there.